Let me ask you something powerful today. What if I told you that the very person who made you question your worth is now drowning in the very chaos they created? What if I told you, while you rise in silence, they're choking in the mask they never removed? You see, the narcissist thought they won. They thought discarding you, replacing you, humiliating you would elevate their power. But here's the truth they never expected. You were never the weak one. You were the source, you were the peace, you were the reflection of everything they desperately pretended to be. And now the new supply is burdened, and the narcissist is living your pain. Let's talk about what's really happening behind the curtain they don't want you to see. When the narcissist replaced you, they didn't upgrade. They recycled their own dysfunction and wrapped it in a shiny new package. The new supply isn't their fresh start, they're their next host. And that means every game, every manipulation, every lie that tore you down is now being repeated, recycled, relived. But worse, why? Because now the narcissist is exposed, they're weaker, the mask is slipping faster. And guess what? They're no longer in control the way they were with you because you were the one that held things together. You made them look sane. You gave them image, status, security. Now the new supply is exhausted, confused, trapped, and trying to fix what you already walked away from. Let's go deeper. The narcissist is not living in love. They're living in performance. They're stuck rehearsing your script, trying to reenact your loyalty, your warmth, your grace, but they can't fake what they don't have. And inside, they're haunted. Why? Because you're no longer available to absorb their poison. Now they're forced to drink from their own cup. Every wound they inflicted on you, it's now circling back in their own life. They see glimpses of you in the mirror of their failure. They feel your absence in the silence of their cold, empty games. The new supply isn't a solution, they're a witness to the crumbling facade, to the desperation, to the broken soul. The narcissist always was beneath the surface. And here's where you rise. You broke the cycle. You didn't just survive, you escaped, and that makes you unstoppable. You stopped being their mirror and became your own light. While they spiral, you rebuild. While they torment, you transcend. While they lie, you live in truth, peace, and power. So if you ever wonder what's happening now that you're gone, let me answer it for you with clarity. They're not winning. They're not evolving. They're not happy. They're living a slow-motion replay of everything they dumped on you, only now they're the one holding the weight. You've been set free. Don't look back. Don't seek revenge. You don't need it, because your peace is the revenge, your healing is the justice, your growth is the legacy. Keep moving forward. You've already won. When a narcissist moves on to someone new, it's easy to assume they've found better. They'll flaunt the new relationship, post idealized photos, speak about how happy they are, and use the illusion to make you question everything you experienced. But what they don't want you, or even the new supply, to see is this. The same mask they wore with you is being used again. The love bombing, the charm, the magnetic attention. It's all recycled, rehearsed, and strategic. The narcissist isn't in love with the new person. They're in love with what the new person can give them. Supply, attention, obedience, control, ego inflation. What's important to understand is that the narcissist hasn't changed. Their patterns haven't healed. Their trauma hasn't been resolved. They didn't wake up better. They just found someone new to exploit. The new supply is being set up in the same emotional game that you were forced to survive. The cycle is predictable. Idealize, devalue, discard. Just as you were once the center of their world before being turned into the source of blame, the new supply will eventually be painted in the same light. Only this time, the narcissist is more desperate to maintain control. They're more unstable, and they have to work even harder to fake the charm because their mask has cracks now. It's been worn too long, and the weight of lies is heavy. The new supply may believe they're special, that they're different, that the narcissist just needed someone who truly understood them. But that's the very illusion that traps them. They're being led into the same emotional labyrinth, and they don't even know it yet. The love they think they've found is a performance, and the price they'll pay for it will mirror what you endured. Perhaps even worse. Because now the narcissist has to prove they didn't lose you. That's not love. That's war disguised as romance. You weren't replaced. You were recycled in someone else's nightmare. And while you rebuild your life in truth, the new supply is slowly being introduced to the same emotional prison you fought to escape. One of the hardest things to grasp when healing from narcissistic abuse is the idea that the narcissist might actually be suffering now. During the relationship, they seemed invincible, cold, calculated, immune to guilt or shame. They gaslighted you, manipulated you, emotionally drained you, and then walked away like nothing happened. But the truth is, narcissists are not unaffected. They are simply experts at externalizing their internal chaos. They took their pain, their emptiness, their deep-seated self-loathing and made you carry it. But once you're gone, that weight doesn't disappear, it rebounds back to its origin. Now, without you to absorb the blame and confusion, they're left alone with everything they spent their lives avoiding. The silence they once used to punish you becomes unbearable when directed at themselves. The loneliness they forced upon you becomes their own torment. The emotional instability you used to regulate for them, through your patience, your compassion, your forgiveness, is no longer present, and that absence isn't peaceful for them. It's painful. It's chaotic. It's a mirror reflecting everything they've tried to escape through control and manipulation. The new supply can't carry that weight like you did, because they don't yet understand the game. And the narcissist knows it. The cracks begin to widen. Their need for control becomes more intense. Their behaviors more erratic. What once was subtle manipulation becomes obvious desperation. They lash out more. They lie more. They panic when the new supply doesn't react the same way you did. Suddenly, they're not the puppet master. They're spiraling in the very drama they used to orchestrate. That chaos they used to stir in your heart, the second guessing, the walking on eggshells, the emotional roller coaster, is now alive in their own daily reality. They're suspicious, paranoid, jealous, reactive. Because somewhere deep down they know they lost something real. Not perfect, but real. Someone who tried, who cared, who gave them more grace than they ever deserved. And now they're trapped in the emotional whirlwind they thought they could outrun by moving on quickly. There is no escape from the truth, and the emotional damage they inflicted on you is now circling back, exposing them to the darkness they spent years avoiding. Narcissists build their identity by feeding off the energy, admiration, and emotional labor of others. You weren't just a partner. You were the scaffolding holding up their entire false persona. You validated their lies, soothed their insecurities, managed their moods, and made them appear more stable, accomplished, or likable than they actually were. To the outside world, they looked strong, charming, even successful. But behind the scenes, it was your emotional strength, your empathy, your consistency that allowed that illusion to exist. They depended on your light to keep their shadow hidden. What happens when that foundation is removed? The mask begins to slip, and this time there's no one there to hold it in place. The narcissist might try to mimic the same dynamic with someone new, but the cracks are bigger now. They're more anxious, more desperate, more performative. Without you running damage control, the inconsistencies in their behavior become harder to conceal. They start to unravel, not always visibly, but internally. Their self-worth was never real. It was borrowed from you. Every compliment you gave them, every time you forgave them, every effort you made to help them grow, those were all pieces of the identity they wore in public. They presented your compassion as proof of their own goodness. Your loyalty made them look worthy. Your achievements became part of their image. But now that you're gone, the reflection is broken. They're no longer standing on the solid ground you provided. They're floating in their own unstable narrative, desperate to find another host to maintain the illusion. Even their new supply begins to notice. The exaggerated stories don't add up. The inconsistencies become too obvious. The narcissist is left scrambling, trying to rebuild the image without the one person who truly made them look whole. They may try to re-enter your life not out of love but out of necessity, because their identity was never built on who they are. It was built on how you made them appear to be. Without your emotional investment, their image deteriorates. What once looked like strength and control begins to look like neediness and chaos. They don't just miss you. They miss the version of themselves they could only be when standing on the foundation you built for them. Narcissists operate in predictable emotional cycles. Idealize, devalue, discard, and repeat. This cycle doesn't change when they move on to a new supply. It simply resets. But with every repetition, the cracks get deeper, the damage more apparent, and their ability to maintain control begins to slip. When they started the same process with the new supply, they hoped it would be a fresh start, a clean slate where they could maintain power and escape the consequences of their previous actions. What they didn't anticipate is that with each repetition, their performance becomes weaker, and more people start to see through the act. In the beginning, they tried to replicate the charm and seduction they used on you. The grand gestures, the constant attention, the intense flattery, it's all part of the idealization phase they recycle every time, but this time it lacks authenticity. It's rushed, it's mechanical, and the new supply, while initially captivated, starts to notice that something doesn't add up. The narcissist gets frustrated quicker, their stories don't align, and their need for control becomes obvious much earlier. What used to be subtle manipulation turns into overt desperation. This shift creates exposure. Friends, family, colleagues, people who were once convinced by the narcissist's charm start to sense something is wrong. Patterns emerge. Red flags get noticed. The lies are harder to hide. Their emotional volatility surfaces sooner, and their attempts to discredit others or play the victim begin to lose effectiveness. Even the new supply, once blind to the manipulation, begins to question their reality. The narcissist is now juggling more instability than ever before. They're haunted by the fact that the image they once maintained with your help is gone, and they're now forced to keep the act going alone. Each failed attempt at control pushes them closer to exposure, and with exposure comes shame, the one thing they've been running from their entire lives. They lose grip not only on their relationships, but on the very identity they've constructed to survive. The cycle is still happening, but it's spinning faster, unraveling quicker, and causing more internal and external damage than ever before. Control, once their weapon, is slipping through their hands like sand. When you finally walked away from the narcissist, you may have felt like your voice was gone. After all the gaslighting, manipulation, and emotional exhaustion, choosing silence might have seemed like weakness, but it's the most powerful move you could have made. Narcissists thrive on reaction. They feed off your pain, your confusion, your need for closure. Every time you explain, defend, or justify yourself, you're giving them fuel to spin the narrative, regain control, and continue the cycle. But silence is a mirror they cannot distort. It forces them to confront a version of themselves they can't manipulate. Your silence sends a message louder than any confrontation could. It says, you no longer have access to me. It says, I see the truth. It says, I've outgrown this game. That message echoes in the narcissist's world in ways you can't see. Without your energy to feed on, they're left with their own emptiness. The attention they once received from you is gone, and no matter how much they try to replace it, it doesn't feel the same. The narcissist begins to feel invisible, irrelevant, powerless, and that's the one thing they can't tolerate. As you grow, evolve, and heal, that becomes another form of consequence they can't escape. Every step you take toward your own peace is a reminder that they didn't break you. Every moment you live in your truth without needing to announce it stings them, because now they have no access, not to your energy, not to your emotions, not to your mind. Your healing becomes their evidence of failure. You were supposed to be destroyed. You were supposed to chase them, to beg, to fall apart. Instead, you got better, stronger, wiser. The narcissist watches from the sidelines, either directly or through the grapevine, as you begin to glow in your freedom. That glow is painful for them. It challenges the illusion they worked so hard to build. It proves they weren't the prize, they were the problem, and you, in your silence, have become untouchable. Your growth has become undeniable. No revenge, no arguments, no final words. Just the quiet, undeniable strength of someone who chose peace over chaos, self-respect over validation, and healing over history. Escaping a narcissist isn't just about leaving a toxic relationship. It's about reclaiming your life, your identity, and your power. When you finally walk away, you aren't simply surviving. You're breaking free from a cycle of emotional imprisonment that was designed to keep you small, silent, and dependent. For so long, you were conditioned to doubt yourself, to suppress your needs, to live in a reality that revolved around someone else's manipulation. That isn't love, that's control, and every step you take away from it is a declaration of your worth. Many people confuse survival with success, but real victory lies not in merely getting out, but in rising afterward, in rediscovering who you are without the constant noise of criticism, blame, and invalidation. It's in the moments when you realize you no longer flinch at silence, when your nervous system begins to calm, when you finally breathe without fear. These aren't small wins. These are milestones of transformation. They mark the shift from being reactive to becoming intentional, from being diminished to becoming empowered. Freedom means you no longer live through their lens. You don't need their validation to feel whole. You don't wait for closure. They don't own the ending to your story. You create it. You decide what comes next. And as you continue walking in your healing, you start to recognize the strength that was buried under years of emotional exhaustion. That strength doesn't just return, it multiplies, because now it's rooted in truth, not survival. It's grounded in clarity, not confusion. What the narcissist failed to anticipate is that breaking you would become the very thing that awakened you. They thought they stripped you of everything, but what they actually did was force you to rebuild. Stronger, wiser, and more in tune with your value. They underestimated your spirit. They didn't expect you to thrive without them. They believed they were your source of light, but now you radiate from within. Your freedom is not just an escape from pain, it's a rebirth. It's your declaration that you will no longer be anyone's emotional dumping ground, scapegoat, or supply. You are no longer living in their story. You're writing your own.